So Breath of the Wild is a thing. The latest Legend of Zelda game came out when Nintendo launched the Switch console, and I'm very torn on this game. I don't know if I love it or super love it. The whole game shifted the focus of the Legend of Zelda series in a way that had not been done since the revolutionary Ocarina of Time. You know, the game that people won't shut up about that isn't Final Fantasy VII. Breath of the Wild made some huge changes to the Zelda formula, but still managed to keep the feeling of the series. That core drive of going on an adventure into the vast unknown world was still there, but never before had the world felt so big. From the time you finish the game's brilliant starting area, which I'm not calling a tutorial because it's so much more than that, I spent 4 hours on the plateau and only talked with one dude, and he was a ghost. But after that, you're free to explore to your heart's content. Sure, the game suggests a direction in which to travel, but there's nothing forcing you to go that way. Gone are the in-game walls or locked doors requiring a skill or item to beat or open them. There's not even a linear story to railroad you. You're free to go straight to the final boss if you want. Good luck. From atop the Great Plateau, you can see in all directions. You can set out on your adventure in any manner you choose. Just looking around is exhilarating and awe-inspiring as you tentatively map out where you will go while admiring the beautiful artwork and lighting of the natural world in Hyrule. But what really sets Breath of the Wild apart from other open-world games isn't its graphics, or its open world, or its non-linear storyline. It's its unprecedented verticality. Breath of the Wild's open world is fun to explore because moving through it is fun. It's populated with travelers, and there are little nooks and crannies with goodies to collect everywhere. Secret monster hideouts with treasures, creatures to catalog, and ingredients to combine, and the only way to find them all is by traveling. So you can walk, run, shield surf, ride a horse, ride a deer, ride a fucking bear! But most importantly, you can climb and glide. This makes all the difference in a game where the world isn't just sprawling outward, but also upward. And so today, I want to talk about Breath of the Wild. Starting right after the release of Skyward Sword in 2011, Breath of the Wild began development. Series creator Eiji Aonuma wanted to bring the series back to its roots by allowing players the ability and freedom to explore Hyrule without limitations. The team behind the game started looking at modern open-world games, such as the Elder Scrolls series, and what they allowed players to do. The original Legend of Zelda game allowed players to come at a problem from any direction, but the series had leaned heavily into the dungeons and items from that point forward. Aonuma was interested in the idea of solving problems from any angle using the means that best suited the player, rather than a one problem, one solution approach that the series had fallen into. In 2017, Breath of the Wild was released with the Nintendo Switch as a launch title, and quickly became a hit with both fans and critics. With this title, the series had been reinvigorated in a much needed way. Critics praised it for its innovations in gameplay, and even hardcore fans of the linear story were impressed. But I mean, at this point, anything would have been better than Skyward Sword. This change in direction was risky. The game is far less forgiving than recent entries into the series, and there was very little hand-holding, particularly in the starting area. The music did away with a lot of the iconic themes in favor of a sparse piano score and a heavy emphasis on ambient sounds of the natural environment. Although I missed the songs at first, the scoring was perfect, and the odd time that those themes did come up in certain locations or as hidden remixes was like meeting an old friend. The story too was very different from past titles, as it was almost entirely optional. Apart from a handful of cutscenes, the plot of the game is entirely skippable, with the world record speedrun being something like 20 minutes. And here's your spoiler warning in case you want to skip the story too. Link wakes up in a strange-looking glowing blue place after having a bath, and he walks outside. After doing some tasks for an old man, it is revealed that Link has actually been asleep for 100 years and was placed into the bathtub by Princess Zelda after he was mortally injured in battle. The bath did manage to heal Link's wounds, but it also stole all his memories. It's the strangest bath I've ever heard of. Now that he is awoken, Link must defeat a monstrous foe that sought to destroy Hyrule 100 years ago, called Calamity Ganon. This foul beast is only held at bay by Princess Zelda's power, and so she calls to you for aid. In order to accomplish this task, you can go right to the castle and get your ass handed to you, or you can explore Hyrule, regain the memories of why you'd want to save this pointy-eared elf girl, and avenge other fallen heroes from the war by helping them regain control of their Power Ranger-esque Zords. The plot is pretty straightforward because there's no guarantee that anyone would see all of it before beating the game, and so details are easily filled in and big plot twists are nowhere to be found. But the plot really isn't the biggest draw of this game, and generally I do enjoy the plots of Zelda's games, except Skyward Sword, which is just find the princess, fail at finding the princess, repeat, defeat the scaly black worm thing, repeat. Like, how many times do I gotta fight this thing? Where are the cool bosses? Why do these controls suck? The biggest draw for Breath of the Wild is how the gameplay really makes you feel like you're a lone adventurer exploring an unknown land. But rather than slogging through an endless wasteland, there is so much to discover. And I'm not talking about the collectibles, because exploring for the sake of exploring is fun. Every part of the map has unique geography and geological formations, and just discovering and exploring these landmarks is so cool. This is a true feeling of unmitigated exploration, and I felt it most profoundly when climbing up something huge. Well, wait, just climbing? What's so special about climbing? Lots of video games offer climbing, it's true, but usually only in designated areas, up these vines or this ladder. Breath of the Wild allows you to climb up anything that you can see, and this is important because the game is built around the fact that if you can see it, you can climb it. Except for a few instances inside shrines and divine beasts, which pisses me off. Don't give me this ability and then take it away just because it's inconvenient. Make better puzzles if you're worried about me climbing around them. But besides these instances, you can climb anything you can see. Climbing is so important in Breath of the Wild that the game teaches you how to do it even before it shows the title screen. Seriously, after you wake up, you walk around, so great, you know how to move. You interact with a button, maybe you try running with the B button, you open some chests, maybe throw some boxes, and then you try to exit the shrine and you're met with a wall. Well, there's a little puddle at the base of the cliff. It's not super deep, but you figure you can jump over it, so you find the jump button. Because for the first time, a Zelda game has a fucking jump button. It's not too deep, so you splash around for a bit, and this is fun. But this wall, your jump isn't that high, but you do it anyway, and pow! Link grabs the wall, and a green wheel appears at his head. And so you try some things, and lo and behold, he climbs up, and the little green circle above his head goes down. You put 2 and 2 together and realize that this must be how long Link can climb for. It actually ticks me off that there's a prompt here to show how to climb because it's not really necessary. It's pretty obvious what to do. So you climb up the cliff, run outside, and then the title screen happens. All this because you need to know how climbing works to play this game, and the game forces you to learn it. Can't get out? Climb. Climb everything. It's fun and you can get places and do shit. Climb, you half-nude elf man! Climb, I say! In order to help guide you through the game, video game designers use something called Weenies. Yes, that's the actual technical term for an object that's used to draw someone's attention to a certain location. Traditionally used in theme parks like Disneyland's castle, a weenie is a tall structure or landmark that can be used to help a person understand where they are in relation to that weenie. In video game design, a weenie is usually used as an easily identifiable landmark that a player is drawn towards. In linear games, this is more often used as a means of telling the player how far they've traveled and how far they have to go in order to reach their intended goal. But in an open world game, weenies are often used to denote points of interest to the player. Humans are naturally drawn towards large objects. That's why tourist traps always have this weird fascination with mundane objects being huge. Or why we're impressed by colossal architecture and landmasses like cathedrals or mountains. So of course, in an open world game, if you want the player to find something or see something, you place a tall ass mountain in the way. And these are everywhere in Breath of the Wild. From the Great Plateau, you can see several weenies, but it's worth noting that these landmarks are all unique. They're made to be memorable because of their coloration or shape or some sort of distinguishing feature, because a weenie is not useful if you can't distinguish it from another weenie. Death Mountain is erupting. The dueling peaks are split down the middle. Mount Hebra has a chunk missing out of it. That tall stone tower looks like it has an airship around it. The Gerudo Highlands are this impassive looking wall, and Hyrule Castle towers above the plains of Hyrule. Even the relatively short, massive bridge of Hylia draws attention as it spans across the vast waters of Lake Hylia. Each of these is distinguishable, and they all beg to be explored. This matters for 2 reasons. The first being that all of these weenies are placed with purpose. Weenies in Breath of the Wild are placed in particular locations because they lead you to more weenies. So the game is revealed bit by bit and the whole region is not apparent all at once. Otherwise it might be overwhelming. The second reason is because Breath of the Wild offers a pro mode which changes the heads-up display to a more minimalist view, which means unless you want to open up the map every few seconds, you have to use on-screen clues to figure out where you're going. Not to mention that at the beginning of the game there is no map, so you're forced to use your surroundings for directional information. But because the weenies are so recognizable, this becomes a joy. There is pleasure to engaging with the world created for you to explore rather than a map screen. You were probably doing this anyway and didn't notice until you unlocked the tower and buried your face in the map. I highly recommend playing in pro mode because it opens up your screen and because it makes gameplay feel more like exploring rather than just staring at a map screen. So we're drawn towards weenies and they help us map the world around us, but not just in 2-dimensional space because Breath of the Wild is a 3-dimensional game. Imagine being told you can climb everything and then a few minutes later seeing a mountain that is cut in half. Of course you're gonna try to climb it. Why wouldn't you? Unlike most open world games, Breath of the Wild's climbing system encourages this kind of exploration in 3D space. In other games, climbing a mountain outside of the designated path might be doable if you're willing to put the effort in or deal with horse glitches. Breath of the Wild openly tells you to fuck the path and often doesn't give you one at all. You're left to climb to the top of whatever weenie you can find, and while you're up there, you'll probably see another weenie you can climb or another non-weenie landmark of interest, which will only help you become stronger and achieve the long-term goal of defeating Ganon. Verticality in Breath of the Wild also allows for potential energy to be exploited. How you choose to tap into that potential energy is also an important aspect of verticality. You had to climb up, but you don't have to climb down. Breath of the Wild offers two other ways of exploiting the verticality you just achieved. Shield surfing, which is endlessly fun and super cool, and gliding, which apart from also being a wicked way to travel long distances, is pretty unique to Breath of the Wild. This allows you far more choice in how to explore the world. If you climb and then glide, you may get there faster, but you risk missing all the tricks and treats on the ground along the way. The choice is important, and that height gives you more options to choose from. But what about Assassin's Creed? Those games have weenies and verticality. Why not Assassin's Creed as a thing? It's true that the use of weenies and verticality is in Assassin's Creed, and it predates Breath of the Wild by a considerable number of years. But Breath of the Wild makes its verticality matter more by offering more to the player. Whenever a weenie or tower or high object is scaled in Assassin's Creed, the player is rewarded with a new map and a section of the city or area, or maybe a secret collectible. Breath of the Wild 2 has collectibles hidden on top of its high land masses, but it just as often does not. Sometimes there might be a puzzle or nothing at all. Breath of the Wild also has towers that can be climbed to unlock part of the map, and yet climbing these objects in Breath of the Wild just feels better than it does in Assassin's Creed, and this has to do with the sense of accomplishment by way of risk and reward. When you climb a building in Assassin's Creed, you hold a button or push a stick forward and up your assassin goes, grabbing ledges and finding footholds as he or she climbs their way to the top of the church's spire, and man, if they don't look badass while doing it. And then you get to the top and you get a neat cutscene with a bird and a map opens and a dive off and there's a bunch of shit for you to do, but you didn't really do anything to get it. The map is open and it tells you what chores you can do, but you didn't risk anything. The reward is that you get to play the game's side quests, but you didn't climb up the spire, you just pressed forward on a stick. But Breath of the Wild gets climbing right, and this is because of that little green wheel I mentioned earlier. Stamina is more than just a mechanic carried over from Skyward Sword. I fucking hate Skyward Sword, and I don't think it used stamina well, but Breath of the Wild really fixes that. Also, how do you make flying boring? Fucking how? Stamina is important because it means that there is risk involved when you climb anything. Sure, Link doesn't look cool when he climbs up. He kind of just shuffles forward. But this means that the tower itself is the game. You only have so much stamina, so do you have enough? Should you leap to get there faster at the risk of losing more stamina? Should you find ingredients and cook food to regain stamina or give you more? Should you find a tall landmark nearby and glide down? All of these are options you have to weigh because if you run out of stamina, you fall. Early game, this might mean death, which sucks, but the game is forgiving enough that you can try again, but you still gotta climb the stupid tower or mountain. And what if it starts to rain? Rain is a real killer in Breath of the Wild because this changes how you think about climbing. Rain makes any surface wet and harder to grip. Do you wait till the weather passes by staying still? But who knows how long that could take. So you risk climbing and using up your stamina as you slip on the wet rocks. And for those who are angry about the rain, yes, it should make climbing harder, that's the point. Because when you get to the top, yes! I did that. I made it. I solved the puzzle. I played the game. And maybe it wasn't hard, but you still did it. You had to figure out a way to get to the top. And if it was a tower, then you get to see a map, but that's it. The reward isn't more of a game because you held a button. Everything to do was already out there before you climbed the tower, but you have a little bit more map filled out, and it feels good to accomplish something, and maybe it'll help you out in your journey. And if it wasn't a tower, maybe there's a treasure chest or a Korok hiding, or maybe there was nothing at all and you climbed the mountain, but you don't feel empty because the view is probably spectacular and you really accomplished something. Every shrine you beat gives you the means to make your stamina grow if you choose. This means you can climb with less risk, and then you're encouraged to climb taller and taller objects and go higher than before. Later in the game, you get this ability to launch yourself into the air. Now passing some of the smaller obstacles that gave you trouble in the earlier game is easy, and there are taller objects still. When you get this power up, the world feels way more accessible because the verticality is more accessible. Hyrule didn't become shorter and more boring. You became stronger with a new skill to explore more areas. Areas that were once too risky to attempt are now open to you, and this makes you feel more like a badass. In real life, people don't climb mountains to find something at the top. They do it because the mountain was there and the drive to climb it is worth the exhaustion and risk to reach their goal. You don't reach the top because there was a prize, you did it for no other reason than you could. The precise placement and use of weenies, the way the game teaches the mechanics of climbing early and elegantly, I might add, the possibility and joy of exploration, the risk, reward, accomplishment, and the sheer drive and childlike desire to climb up tall things are why Breath of the Wild really gets verticality and climbing better than any other game. It's why this game feels huge when other games are so much larger. The topography and geography make this game like no other because real landscapes are three-dimensional, and exploring all three dimensions in dramatic and dynamic ways is easy and fun. And the sequel to Breath of the Wild is set to come out in the same world, so it will likely have the same attention to detail regarding verticality. So there you go, Eiji Aonuma. You did it. You made exploration a joyous and wonderful experience. And that is why Breath of the Wild's verticality is so important and makes for great exploration. Here are my stray thoughts. Shooting arrows in bullet time is dope. The different weapon types made for different combat styles, and learning how to play all of them was fun. I do kind of want more combat types and weapons though. Sneaking up on enemies and murdering them was a delight. And I'm in love with Zelda's design, and her voice acting was superb, except I cut her hair short in the trailer for the sequel, and I don't know why, but that makes me really mad. But like, not mad enough to not want the sequel. Seriously, any day now, please. Hey! Thanks so much for watching that episode. Breath of the Wild is truly one of my favorite games, so I really hope you enjoy the game and this video as much as I do. If you like that, you can also check out our other channel where we talk about movies and TV shows in a more freeform kind of way. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you'll never miss another episode of This Is a Thing, or the long and the short of it, or anything else happening right here on Cinemasters Ultimate Timeline.